Let's watch a CNN interview with a Republican House member who will be in the Doge caucus that'll cut government spending and save America and all these different things that I think helps point out some of the shortcomings with what Republicans are trying to sell here in terms of what they're really going to do and how quickly it all falls apart under the least bit of scrutiny. So let's line these clips up and be back after with the much needed fact checks and context.
You know, there was, I think, $8 billion dedicated to that, and we have 8 charging stations across the country that have actually been built. Why are we spending our resources on that? $5 billion going to electric school buses. That's not necessary. In Oklahoma, it wouldn't make any sense. These are things that we really have to evaluate and figure out what's the best use of our dollars, and I don't think that's a good use of taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think a lot of Americans say it should be looked at. I will just note Oklahoma received a lot of money, billions of dollars to repair roads and bridges, which are something that I think there's bipartisan support
Oklahoma has also
for.
actually contributed millions of dollars to the federal budget to be able to get those dollars back.
No doubt states have contributed, maybe not the amount that they're getting back. Congresswoman Stephanie Bice, thank you so much.
First thing to correct here is her point on electric charging stations. The plans here for these are rolled out on a 10-year schedule. Most things with like federal funding are. It was never expected to have been done immediately. She knows this. Anyone who works in the government knows. Anyone who's familiar with like federally funded projects knows this, right? You don't like fund the thing and then snap the fingers and it's done, unfortunately. It's also coordination. This specific thing is coordinated between the state and federal level with the transportation departments in the states and the localities, many of whom have no experience ever having to roll out programs with like electric vehicles or anything like this. But what we're seeing is, despite this, and they're still overcoming these hurdles, and plenty of chargers are being made available and created weekly, especially through private investment that's made possible from Biden's infrastructure law, something that Trump promised and failed to deliver, with the specific publicly funded chargers having contracts issued to be built in 12 states, with 17 states either awaiting or considering proposals to accept them, with the funding being enough for 20,000 charging spots total, again, that we will see built over a 10-year period. About the electric buses run on diesel, which is very damaging, not only to the environment, but to the health. Like objectively, you can't deny diesel's negative effects. So why would we want our children, like the most vulnerable of our population, exposed to this at their schools, somewhere where we force them to go 5 days a week, when there is a much better option available in electric buses? It sounds not only like a no-brainer to me, but like the entire purpose of what the government should be spending money on. And to the last point, if we want to talk about government spending, let's talk about blue states subsidizing red states. Like, let's cut all that funding and make the red states survive on their own. That would save us literally millions of dollars. Let's cut out all the subsidies to billionaires and private companies, like the things we hand to Elon. We'll wonder if Doge is going to go after those. I will bet you $1 million they won't. Or we could cut out things like homeowners deductions, tax breaks for churches, things that just absolutely aren't needed and are handouts to wealthy individuals. Like, no, we're not going to do this. Like, Doge is just going to focus on things like WIC and food stamps and welfare and Social Security and Medicare and protections for workers and consumers. Like, yeah, got it. I figured as much. Like, Republicans never want to have the conversation about return on investment. Like, when we talk about spending, especially what spending we should cut, it's important to talk about what said spending will create. So what we're going to miss out on if we cut it. It's why Republicans, for instance, will complain about how Biden spends more, but they never mention how like his deficit spending is less than Trump's because his spending still creates more revenue. Spending on things that downstream will improve health, for instance, will improve people's abilities to work, will improve the amount of money in the economy, etc. So like things like, getting diesel away from our children. It's like kind of like how when we got lead out of communities, especially like we saw disproportionately this affect Black communities, we saw crime go down. Like these things have downstream effects that then affect everything. When crime goes down, economics are better in those environments, right? So if we're trying to cut, let's not cut these social programs that then help people create more wealth, so have a larger return on investment. Instead, let's just cut like pointless billionaire handouts and money for warmongering, right? Like these are the things that should be the targets.
Instead saying that they would, and he would not commit to cuts. Instead saying that they would eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. I think those are some of the things you have in mind when you're talking about efficiencies. But when you look at studies of the amount that would save if it's actually excised, it's puny. I mean, that is not anywhere close to the number that they're talking about with DOGE. Don't you have to cut Social Security to hit that number?
You absolutely do not have to cut Social Security to hit that number. As a matter of fact, Medicare and Medicaid is where we should be looking at trying to find efficiencies. Healthcare costs have skyrocketed, particularly after Obamacare was implemented, and there are opportunities for us to try to find ways to rein in that spending on the healthcare side.
Couple more false statements being made here that absolutely have to be addressed before we end the video. They absolutely are trying to hide cuts to things like Social Security and Medicare, food stamps, etc., these kinds of social safety nets. They want to hide those cuts behind this illusion of we're going to cut pointless bureaucracy that's ruining the government, which even if we grant that's what they're going to do, right? 75% headcount reduction, going after these agencies that, definitely don't even need gone after, but they're going to go after them. It's only about $200 to $250 billion that would cut from the budget, where their promise is $2 trillion. So in that alone, you can see like how they have to be going after more than what they're actually just saying or signaling. And I love how matter-of-factly she says, no, we're not going to go after your Social Security. Like, why would we do that? Like, before confidently being like, it's your health care we're going to go after. Like, yeah, I wonder why that's not what they're mentioning first. And they're instead saying like corruption and stuff. Like Medicare is one of the most important functions of the government. Like ensuring our elders won't be priced out of healthcare is one of the best functions our government does. The other is Social Security, which keeps 2/3 of our seniors out of poverty. And both are constant targets of Republicans. I wonder why. Also, I would like to point out, since the ACA passed, we've consistently been under what the projections were of healthcare spending, and it's single-handedly what's allowed Medicare to have this sort of second life when it was very much a dying program before it. So I don't understand that lie, or like why tell that lie when it's such an easily disprovable one, honestly. Like it doesn't really make sense. Like what are these people trying to convince us of, right? Like what they're actually trying to do is just a conservative fever dream. It's the literal establishment, which they've learned that they can get away with doing if they just say that Democrats are the establishment. Like this is literally deep state elites trying to claw away from the working class to have more laying room to fund their own benefits and cuts. That's literally what the deep state is. Like they're going to cut things like the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, the CFPB, sorry, words, hard. An agency that protects consumers to the tune of recovering over $20 billion lost dollars a year from consumers to billionaires like Elon, for an operating cost of less than $1 billion. One of the most efficient agencies ever. And Elon and Vivek are both have said publicly they want to destroy that agency. Or the EPA creating environmental protections for workers. So they don't have to work around poison and stuff. Worker regulations, the Department of Labor, while also pulling from Social Security and Medicare, whatever they can get their hands on, food stamps, WIC, welfare, unemployment, because the more we spend on things like this, helping those below us come up, the less that they can spend on the top, pulling the ladder out below them. We can't afford things like tax cuts without deficit spending. And Republicans want to be financially responsible while helping the billionaires. So, of course, you have to rob the poor guys to benefit the wealthy. It's like the reverse Robin Hood.